Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'll show you my GPU pass-through setup on Arch Linux and my integration in Hyprland and Qtile with RDP and Looking class. I will guide you through all necessary steps to pass through a second GPU, a second graphics card, into a virtual machine. Passing through a GPU, a graphics card, to a virtual machine to get full graphical performance for games, for advanced video editing or complex office applications is definitely one of the most exciting topics of Linux computing that I have experienced so far. No dual boot configuration with Windows 11 is needed anymore. Let me show you the end result before we diving into the details. I'm here on Hyprland and I have my Windows 11 virtual machine with Looking class here open on the second work stream. And I can use it with full hardware acceleration, because when I search here for Device Manager, you see that here is the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 760 available in Windows 11. And the system is running with 2560, 1440, and the refresh rate is set to 75 Hertz. When I press Super Key 3, I can move to the third work stream. But I also can open Windows 11 with RDP. I have created a script for that, so I just need to enter VM. And the nice thing here is now that the screen resolution adapts dynamically. So when I move this window border to the right, you see that the screen resolution adapts automatically. I can also open another terminal and move this to the side here, adapts automatically. And also here in RDP, you see that all desktop effects are enabled. So blurred context menus, rounded corners. So everything is available also here. Because isn't it great? Enough power for games, video editing and advanced office application. And with RDP and the fascinating application Looking Glass, you can integrate your virtual machine seamlessly into your workflow. No second monitor or switching the input source on your monitor is needed. For this tutorial, you need 2 GPUs installed on your system. 1 GPU for the host and 1 GPU for the virtual machine guest. In my system, I'm using an AMD ATI Radeon GPU and an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 760 to pass through to the virtual machine. There are also tutorials available for single GPU pass-through, but this is even more complex, is not so stable and more difficult to manage. But give it a try. The initial setup is exactly the same. In this video, I'll show you my setup, so all the applications that I have installed on my system and my configuration. But that does not mean that everything works similar on your system. GPU pass-through means trying things out. Start your experiments. You will find all scripts that I'm using, all configuration files and URLs to external resources in the description below. And if you like that video, please subscribe to my channel. Are you ready? Let's jump in. First, you have to check that your computer supports PCE pass-through via OVMF, Open Virtual Machine Framework. Here are the requirements listed. Your CPU must support hardware virtualization for KVM and IOMMU for the pass-through itself. Intel VT D chips are listed here, so this is also something that you have to check. In general, the AMD CPUs are very good supported. The motherboard must support IOMMU. And the guest GPU ROM, so from your second GPU, from your second graphics card, must support UEFI. So in your BIOS, you have to activate for AMD CPUs IOMMU NX mode, and SVM mode. And for Intel CPUs, VTD and VTX. Of course, you have to install the required applications before activating GPU pass-through. You have to install Virt Manager, Virt Viewer, QEMU, several additional applications that are listed here, and OVMF are required. First, you have to update your grub file, your grub bootloader, with sudo vim /etc default grub. And on top you see here the command line Linux default. You have to load the RD driver pre-vfio-pci. You have to enable IOMMU for your AMD chip. If it's an Intel chip, you can replace AMD with Intel. IOMMU equals PT, and for AMD GPUs, video equals EFIFB off is required. To regenerate grub, you have to enter sudo grub mk config. You need to make sure that your GPU is in an own IOMMU group, and this is the script to test it. You can download the script from my GitLab. Let's run the script on my machine with ./IOMMU.sh. And when you scroll down, you see that my second GPU is in an own IOMMU group. It's the group 16. And these are the two devices that you have to pass through to your virtual machine. Please note these IDs. You have to make sure that the required modules for VFIO will be loaded with the boot up of Arch Linux. And you do this with sudo vim /etc mkinit cpio.conf. And you see here in the modules part that the VFIO PCI, VFIO, and VFIO IOMMU type 1 modules are defined here, and that means that will be loaded with the boot up. And when you scroll down, you also must make sure that modconf is added to your hooks. To regenerate the mkinit cpio, you can enter sudo mkinit cpio -p linux. The next required step is that we need to bind the device IDs to VFIO PCI driver, though that the VFIO PCI driver can grab your second GPU. And you do this by creating a file with sudo vim /etc /modprobe.d vfio.conf. And here you see that with the options command, I bind to the VFIO-PCI driver the IDs that you have noted from your second GPU. Save the file, and now it's time to reboot your system. Now it's time to test the configuration. On my GitLab, you will find a script to test your VFIO configuration. There's a folder GPU-PT GPU pass-through. And in this folder, you find the test vfio.sh file. And with this command, you can test your VFIO configuration. Let's check the configuration with /test VFIO. And here in the output, you see that VFIO has been installed successfully. You can also see that the two IDs that you have noted from your configuration has been binded to the VFIO PCI driver, and the service is enabled. So if this output in your system looks similar, then the installation was successful. Phew, installation is done. Now we can proceed with the configuration of Windows 11. When I open the File Explorer, you see that there are no desktop effects enabled, and the performance here of the virtual machine is relatively low from a graphic perspective. So here no rounded corners around the windows. Also the context menu has no transparency. The start menu is flat, so no effects available at the moment. And this is what we want to change by passing through a second GPU into Windows 11. First of all, you should update your Windows 11 installation. In Settings, scroll down to Windows Update, and the system is searching and downloading available updates. It's important that remote desktop connection is available and activated. So go to remote desktop and make sure that this is set to on. I have created a video about how to set up the remote desktop connection from your Linux host into your virtual machine with Windows 11. Now we can test the RDP connection. I'm using FreeRDP, and this is the command, and I connect to this IP address, and this is the IP address from the virtual machine. You find the IP address here in the network adapter of your virtual machine setup. And now we can connect via RDP into the Windows 11 virtual machine by running the script. And here we are in the virtual machine via RDP. And that's important because now we will start to pass through the GPU into Windows 11. And then you can only connect to Windows 11 via RDP, or you have to connect a second monitor to your GPU, or use a separate monitor entry on your existing monitor. So let's shut down the system. Go back to Virt Manager and open the configuration of your Windows 11 VM. Now we need to add two parameters to the XML file, to the XML configuration. The first one is here in the Hyper-V section. We need to add the parameter vendor_ID, and you can set it to any value. The second important parameter is a new section, KVM hidden state on. And this hides within Windows 11 virtual machine that Windows 11 is running on a virtual machine. Now it's time to connect your second GPU, the GPU that you want to pass through to your virtual machine. Click here on Add Hardware and select PCI host device. And now you have to search for your GPU. Here is my GPU, the GTX 760. And I also have to pass through the audio controller. And now you see here the second GPU. If you're using an NVIDIA card, you probably have to dump your ROM file from your second GPU, from your NVIDIA card. This is not required for AMD cards, but for NVIDIA cards, maybe you need it. But this is also something that you have to try out. And it's very well documented here on the Rising Prism website. If you need this, then you can add this command and path. The ROM file must be located in the folder user share VGA BIOS, and here in my case the GTX 760 ROM file, and of course the same on your audio device. There are several methods available to dump your GPU ROM from your card, and it's very well documented. You can do this from a Windows system, but of course you can do it on Linux as well. You cannot pass through a GPU into Windows 11 and in parallel access the desktop via Virt Viewer. This is not possible. But what you can do is to access the desktop via RDP when the GPU has been passed through successfully to Windows 11. And this is exactly what we want. Okay, let's give it a try. Let's start the system. So the system is now booting up in the background, and you see there is no connection to the graphical console for the guest. No, it's not possible because the system is now using the GPU. And after 1 or 2 minutes, you can try to access the system via RDP. And here is Windows 11 running. Move that window to the 4th screen. Here we are. And let's check the system settings. It seems that the NVIDIA graphics card has been detected successfully. So the system has now switched. Have you seen this? Okay, it has been installed in the background. You see here already the rounded corners. The NVIDIA control panel is now there. And when I click here on the Explorer, I can also see here the rounded corners and yeah, the transparency of the context menus. Let's close it and switch to the dark theme. That looks a bit nicer. And all desktop effects are now available. You see here the blurred background, again the rounded corners and the light blur of the context menu. So everything is now there. Looks very nice. Let's search here for Control Panel and search for Advanced. Click here on View Advanced System Settings. Here on Visual Effects, Settings, and make sure that Adjust for Best Appearance is selected and click on OK. Let's restart the system. Okay, the performance is now much better. You see the animations are now much smoother. And this is, in my opinion, already enough to run Office applications. But if you want to run games on your virtual machine, you have two options. You can connect your second GPU to your monitor, or you can use Looking Glass. Looking Glass is an open source application that allows the use of a KVM configured for VGA PCE Passthrough without an attached physical monitor. And this is what I want to install now. Click here to download now. And you find here the version B6, and I download here the Windows 11 host application. I unzip and install. Looking Glass host has been installed successfully. Let's shut down the system. In the XML configuration of your virtual machine, you have to add several configuration parameters for Looking Glass, and this is this one. This is the Looking Glass documentation. You see here the additional parameters that you have to add to your KVM configuration, and the memory size must be calculated. And here is a dedicated section, determining memory section. And here you see how this value can be calculated based on your screen resolution that you want to use. In my case, it's 64. I click on Apply. In addition, you have to add to input devices the VirtIO keyboard and the VirtIO tablet. You can start your virtual machine. And now we can start the Looking Glass host. The Looking Glass icon is here in the processes available. And you can start the Looking Glass client just with the command Looking Glass client. Let's start Looking Glass. And here is Windows 11 through Looking Glass. Let's log in. So the screen resolution is not correct yet. And change the display settings. And I change the display settings to 9020 1080. I keep the changes and I switch to full screen mode. And now I have the Windows 11 machine ready for gaming, full graphical performance through Looking Glass, GPU accelerated with the second GPU that is installed on your system. And I can switch back to Linux and then switch back again to Windows with Super Key F for full screen mode. I can move the window with Super Key Shift 3 to the third screen, and also here then Windows 11 available in native performance. And of course you can also connect a second monitor to your second GPU, and then you can have Windows 11 with full performance and your Linux installation side by side. Or you can use a second monitor input, and then you can switch between the both systems with your monitor. And that's it for today. Now you have learned everything what you need to pass through a GPU to a virtual machine. And you can pass through the GPU, of course, also to other operating systems, like other Linux distributions, or even Mac OS. So have fun with your new system and see you next time.